All right. Good evening, everybody. Before we start the meeting here formally, looking at the agenda, do we just want to go through a quick call of who's present for tonight's Planning Commission workshop meeting where we'll be talking about the administrative zoning changes? My name is Nate Jones. I am the township planner. Oh, okay. Or I'll just announce we have almost a full complement of planning commissioners here. We have one that will not be attending tonight, and we have one more that will be on their way. We do have all staff that was planned to be in attendance as well, and we have Township Engineer Brian McAdam joining us via Zoom. Tonight's intent for the meeting is to review the text amendments that are currently being contemplated and reviewed for the administrative zoning ordinance amendments that we're looking to do. For the purpose of those in the audience, our planning commissioners, and those who will be watching at home, I think it's very important to note that this exercise in these administrative text amendments does not include any modifications to the zoning map, proposed uses, which uses are allowed in which zoning districts, modifications to zoning districts, or any other land use policy item. We are purely focusing this exercise on administrative matters that help us with enforcement, daily use of the ordinance itself for the assistance of township staff, our zoning officer, the township solicitor, and our residents and businesses who are also looking to file zoning permits with the township. This is part of our overall look back exercise that's been done and in process now for several years. And we are now at a point now where through township review of notes and exercise of the comprehensive zoning ordinance that was adopted in 2019, looking at making a bunch of these, what we would call nuts and bolts changes to ensure that the tool of the township zoning ordinance works as effectively as possible for everyone. So again, no land use policy is being contemplated as part of this, no zoning map amendments, no zone changes, no use changes. Just wanted to make sure that that was on the record. With that, I was thinking that our format for the evening, and I would like to take a poll of our planning commissioners on how they feel about it, is we could go through each section. There are 4 sections. We don't need to read everything line by line, verse and code, but we can certainly review it, and I would be happy to share the overall arching changes that we're looking to make in each of these sections based off of the notes of staff and our zoning officer, and take feedback that we can incorporate into another draft moving forward for you. When the Planning Commission is complete with their review and they're comfortable with these administrative amendments, when that time comes, we would be looking for eventually a vote of recommendation from the Planning Commission to send it to the Board of Commissioners for their review afterwards. And so with that, does anybody have any questions, any comments, any other opening remarks they'd like to make as we start this? Okay, I will promise to keep this as active as possible, as I know that this is not the most exciting topic in the world. But I assure you it is necessary for us as we continue to try and do our job here for our residents and businesses. Just as a quick overall look, the major sections that we are looking at here based off of, again, these housekeeping notes that have been made and compiled over some time are amendments to our definitions section, specifically to tighten up definitions to make sure that there's no trouble with interpretation of what a particular term is. Or defining a code technically that maybe had not been defined previously, even in some of the simplest of cases where one would presume that we didn't necessarily need a definition for it. We did feel that definitions for all of our uses and exercising terms in the ordinance were important. Secondly, our conditional use process and the public notice process. All we're looking to try and do there is make sure that it is in line as possible with the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, which is the governing land use code for the Commonwealth. The changes that we've made there are to make it more in line with the state law than anything else. Next, after that, we have the signage section. This is based off of receiving, reviewing, and administering sign permit applications over the past several years from a functional perspective, as a zoning officer, as building code official, as township planner, in terms of how we ensure that we're getting what we want out of the ordinance, but also for the benefit of people who are coming in and applying regularly, like sign businesses, to make sure that the ordinance is clear, concise, and able to be exercised. And then last but not after that, I'm sorry, second to last is the same with our parking section. It's exactly the same thing to ensure that when projects are going through the land development process, or we have zoning uses that are coming in for a fit-out permit for both building and zoning, that we're able to administer it effectively and there aren't any concerns about misinterpretation or confusion in the language. And then last but not least, our commercial zone sections. And that is specifically the general commercial, highway commercial, the West Coastville commercial, making sure that certain items in the language within those specific zones is clear and concise. It's not changing anything about how those zoning districts work or what's allowed in them. Again, it just goes back to making sure, as people have come in with land developments, conditional uses, permit applications, that there's clarity and that we can process applications effectively. So that's the overall section. And I think now, for the benefit of members of the public, I can switch so that you could see it as well. Some of the language that we are looking at here, again, this is pending ordinance and draft language. It is not official in any way, shape, or form, and will likely be modified. Mark, would you be okay if we did a screen share on that? Okay, great. So we'll just get that up here real momentarily. Give me a second. Okay, so we'll start with the conditional use section. And as far as that goes, for members of the public who are looking here, this is the beginning of the section for conditional use applications. A conditional use is a use that's allowed, but when it's applied for, the use goes to the Planning Commission for review and recommendation, and then the Board of Commissioners for consideration for approval. And the language that we're looking to modify here, in a nutshell, is very simple. In the past, Lower Macungie Township has required the submission for mailings to be done via certified mail. Now, certified mail has an extra fee that's associated with it. If you're a member of the public watching, I'm sure you might be aware of what certified mailing is. It's the little green card that gets sent back for a return receipt. What we have found over the years of doing it this way is, in many cases, that certified mailing, which is delivered by the United States Post Office, cannot sometimes make it to its specific addressee because of multiple reasons. The business might not be available, or in many cases, in resident abutters, we have a situation where if the mail delivery is done in the middle of the day, no one's at home, and then therefore that can't be signed off on. And if it can't be signed off on, then we don't get the return receipt for it. In other cases, and I was shared this with the township solicitor, if you live in a community or you work in an office and that's where it's being sent to, the person up front signs for it, but the original intended recipient doesn't necessarily receive it, or the sign off is from a different person. So the MPC doesn't say we need to do certified mailings. We do regular mailings all the time for other public notice. And as everyone is very well aware, we in Lower Macungie work as hard to be the most transparent community we possibly can. It's just what we're finding here with the certified mailings is we're hitting a little bit of a roadblock in terms of when they get sent out. So we're really not looking to change anything else other than that mailing. The second thing that we are looking to change that doesn't have to do with the public notice aspect of it is processing of conditional uses. From a procedural standpoint, our ordinance states at this point in time that we want to see a conditional use application and your land development application at the same time. However, what we found over a very long period of time is the conditional use process, via the conditions that may or may not be granted by the Board of Commissioners, shape what an eventual land development plan is going to look like. It could shape building placement. It could shape parking placement on a site plan. It could shape the landscaping plan. And because of those items, it seems for us, for someone to file a preliminary final plan at the same time as a conditional use plan can be somewhat of a circular exercise because they might need to go back and make some major modifications. At this juncture in time, staff feels and is recommending that we should be receiving a conditional use application first. And traditionally, the old saying goes, you can file both at the same time. We here require it, but in other communities, people do it at their own risk. But for the benefit of the applicant even, it's best to know what your conditions are and what in an approved conditional use your requirements from the granting authority of the board are to help you form your land development plan than to try and go through the process at once and then have to go back and maybe make some major modifications. So that's another modification that we have found in processing these for a great number of years, that would be easier, not just for staff as we're administering the process or our boards as you're reviewing and making recommendations or approvals, but also for the applicants, because in the end of the day, it's going to keep them from having to go back and redo work and spend more time and money through the process. So as far as the conditional use section goes, those are the two main changes that we were looking to implement as part of this administrative text change. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or further input that we should take into consideration for this as we contemplate the language? Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's very cut and dried. And again, we think that this, in both cases, it's going to be very helpful in us as we administer the process. So with that, we'll move on to a next section here. And we'll share and we'll move towards discussing probably one of the longer items, and I do apologize for that, but I think it's best to get it out of the way right now, and that is the definitions section. Now, I think it's safe to say that if you were to define everything that you could possibly think of in a zoning ordinance, you could be looking at having a definitions section that's the largest section of your ordinance. But the definitions also govern how our zoning officer, how the boards, and how staff process every application you can imagine, whether it's a zoning application, conditional use application, special exception, zoning variances, and the land development process. Anything in the language that was circulated to the Planning Commission that is in red is either modified or new. And what we've done in a number of the applications, application of the new definitions here, is in certain cases, as you can see under, for instance, architectural grade cladding, we pointed back to our adopted design guidelines, which is, while not an exact portion of the ordinance, is something that our zoning officer and we as staff and the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners look to enforce to make sure that we're getting high level of design excellence from applicants that come in. So in any case where you see as per seen in the design guidelines, it's making sure that any applicant is aware that they need to follow that in each and every portion of either their site design, landscaping, or architecture. So that is put in multiple places. Again, not to go through them in ad nauseum for everything, but we formally defined a bank and financial institution. Well, it's something that everybody would probably understand what it is. It's a use that's in our use chart. We wanted to define it. The same goes for boat, RV, service repair, bottling, and packaging. These are fairly simple uses, but again, we added a definition to it to make sure it's there. We tightened up the definition of building coverage to ensure that the footprint included other items that also were either accessory structures or accessory to the main structure that would create impervious surface. So when we're doing our calculations, it makes it a little bit easier. You know, we're only in the B's here, but again, as you can see, we just keep going through to just tighten things up. Commercial laundry and dry cleaning, previously not defined. We defined it. Construction building supply showroom. That was one where there were some questions in the past and we had some processes with that, and it doesn't apply to anything that has already gone through our process, but in the future we wanted to make sure the definition was clear and succinct. Added on historic reenactment and interpret exhibits to cultural centers or cultural facilities, just to make sure if someone comes in and wants to do some sort of a reenactment or have a museum exhibit that, you know, it's a permitted use or it's regulated use, I should say. So again, just going through the basics. I will jump into some of the main ones. We defined emergency services, which again is a pretty clear one. Uh, We made sure that we were set with drive-through and fast food establishments, just in the title of the use of the use itself. And as you can see, in a lot of sections, we didn't even touch it. Or we made modifications to just Scrivener's errors or grammatical errors. We made sure that junkyard was also to be notified as towing and salvage. They're one and the same, but just to clear that up in case there's questions. LED, we formally defined as it's defined essentially in the in the dictionary to make sure everybody's aware of what that is. So again, this is very 30,000 foot up, defining what a medical office is. We all know what it is. Now it's defined. Tightening up our multifamily dwelling definition to include the types of multifamily dwellings that exist, such as garden apartments, mixed-use structures, and so on and so forth. And, you know, as we get to the middle here, I mean, again, I think it might be more beneficial to see if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns about definitions that they did see or ideas for other terms that should be defined. I did hear one already to make sure that we had the definition of lot area match saldo and zoning together. So that's something that we'll be looking to do just for consistency purposes. We did do some firm definitions for signs, as we do see so many sign permits. So we have freestanding sign, LED sign, monument sign, defining each and every one of them specifically, so there's no question. And again, that more or less takes us to the end of we're getting to the end here. Again, I mean, we're defining taxidermy, theater and cinema, temporary parking lot per the West Coastville zoning district, with the expectation that at some point someone may or may not put a small parking lot in if they need to. Walls, warehouse, distribution center, which is a moot point because the township has reached its point as far as allowed land uses for warehouses. So it's a moot point. There can't be any more warehouses in the township. So, but we made sure with the definition section, it was cleared up. Same with wholesale activities, wireless communication facilities, and that more or less takes us to the end. It's many pages because we do have many defined terms, but again, it's clearing up any ambiguities, fixing any grammatical errors, tightening up the language, or providing a very basic definition where there was none before. I'm happy to take any questions, any comments, suggestions. Again, this is a working document, so we're looking for your feedback so I can make some changes for future submission for your review.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, God.
I'll start with a really easy one. Wholesale is misspelled for wholesale activities.
Sure.
There was a number 4 added to the daycare. What number was there before?
Let me see here. Wholesale, the selling or distribution of supply of goods. Oh, for daycare. I'm sorry. Oh, you know what? I apologize. It was a
Yeah.
typo, and that was actually for clarity's sake.
Okay.
And the reason for that, in part, I believe, had to do with state legislature and state regulations, but also to make sure that, again, as people are having daycare businesses in the township, that they have the clarity of the number in which you qualify before you go from just being someone who is caring for children to being a daycare business. And that was based off of execution of our ordinance when people are coming in for applications by Mr. Tranguch and Mr. Russo here. So,
All right, lastly, when I read manufactured house versus mobile home, I feel like there's a lot of commonalities in there. So one,
Yep.
go ahead if you want to. Help me.
One of our understandings with manufactured home and mobile home, and the reasoning for that is in part because of how it's regulated by the state. So there's a specific section under the UCC as far as mobile homes. And I believe that there's a definition that's associated with it. Whereas manufactured home doesn't just need to be a mobile home. It can be certain types of modular homes that are being prefabricated at other locations and put together. So that's why we have the two of them. Because again, from a zoning perspective, you also want to have consistency with state language. And if you were to look at the UCC, there's an entire section with respect to mobile homes and how they're regulated as far as their construction, anchoring, so on and so forth.
It just sounds like it's really similar. I mean, you have a prefabricated house.
Mm-hmm.
It comes to the site, gets delivered.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'm happy to maybe talk with Mr. Tranguch, who's our department director, and this township's BCO building code official.
I just don't know if like someone will be able to find a loophole in that. I don't know, like, is there some districts that allow one over the other?
We have listed, when you look at, if you were to look at the use table, we do have, it very specifically called out as a mobile home, whereas others are single-family home, multifamily dwelling, attached single-family dwellings like a twin or townhomes. And again, when you look at the manufactured housing aspect, I mean, any one of those units can be essentially manufactured housing or modular housing that's put together on site.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. But you know what, we will look into that. I'd like to ask Mr. Russo and Mr. Tranguch for their opinion on that a little bit more to see if we can tighten up, because
Yeah,
we don't want to have any inconsistencies
No,
there. It's
yeah.
just, we also want to make sure we're covering our bases.
yeah, we'll take a look at that because it's also, there's a lot of language in the Saldo and in the zoning that specifically calls out mobile home. We didn't want to get rid of that definition exclusively. But yeah, as Nate said, we are looking to kind of, merge language from other statutes, UCC in particular, as it would relate to the next step in the process after land development.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you for that input. Does anybody else have comments for definitions? Great.
Under agricultural residue, this might just be me not understanding, but what is AP, an AP district? Can that be defined?
Yeah, so when we're talking about agricultural residue, that is, if you were to look at our AP district and some of our agricultural language that exists in the zoning code, the zoning ordinance, it's pre-existing in terms of how we regulate certain uses, specifically to ensure some of our land preservation activities, and also how calculations are made when people are doing agricultural use, and how the percentage of that comes out as far as lot yield, whether you're doing a certain type of subdivision, like our open space subdivision, or in other cases, just in how we manage what qualifies as agricultural use on a particular lot and what doesn't. So that's actually been in our ordinance for quite some time, since before the 2019 rewrite. It's existing language that's in place. And again, it goes back, if you were to look at the AP zone and uses that are regulated and some of the regulations that are listed in there, it speaks to agricultural residue. So that term is defined in there for that purpose.
Under garage, just under one, or it should just space. It's just more for visual purposes. And then I did have a question for medical office, since that's new. It specifically is excluding beauty treatments and cosmetic treatments. From that, is that included as another definition, or is that as part of the mixed use structure.
So you're saying with respect to the definition of a medical office, and then it is beauty treatments and cosmetic treatments that do not qualify as a medical office unless the service or procedure is being provided by and conducted by a licensed medical professional. So that's an enforcement, and it's an item that has come up in a number of our peer communities, and here as well. Certain treatments that do qualify as medical procedures that require licensure and also sterilization of the site in a certain type of clinical atmosphere need to be provided for certain treatments, as opposed to in another atmosphere that might not be sterile or essentially a medical setting. So what we have found, and other peer communities have found, is in this case, we wish to ensure that whereas a beauty treatment or cosmetic procedure does not qualify as a medical office use unless a service is a procedure is provided by a licensed medical professional, it basically means that you need to have somebody on staff there. They can't say, oh, well, it's just a medical office, but then you don't have someone who has the licensures that are necessary to provide for it. So it's kind of, as we said before, like those loopholes. It's making sure that no one's trying to take advantage of that loophole. And it goes both ways. Whereas, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Russo as he's the duly appointed zoning officer, similar treatments should not be being done in other businesses that don't have the facilities for them. So it's basically both ways.
Under the nonprofit company sponsored recreation or technical training, it's just a question about full-time and professional staff. Would it be okay to put full-time volunteer?
Yeah, I mean, if it's we could add that, because if you are a nonprofit and you do have volunteers, I think the one thing that we want to make sure of here is because we have had inquiries about this in the past, and this is one of those ones where, quite frankly, we did need to kind of create a definition for it, because we do have large employers in the region and within the township that are looking to do it. And what we would just like to make sure is that at the end of the day, it's not a use that's being abused or being stretched. Like, its intent is for training, employee wellness, team building, professional activities. If it's a nonprofit organization or a company, it doesn't quite matter. It's just so long as it's being done. So if the nonprofit organization has full-time volunteers and they're part of that organization, I'm sure we can certainly add that in. It's, again, just making sure that we don't get that creep where the use is being unintentionally exploited or intentionally exploited. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions or comments regarding the definition section in any way, or, okay.
No, sir.
All right, moving on then. Let us jump to another one of our sections here. So we'll go to the parking. Parking is something that we look at incredibly closely during both zoning permit review for fit outs of existing structures, and of course, land development process. It's something that's highly involves our zoning officer, myself as township manager, our township planner, I'm sorry, and the township community development director, and of course, our township engineer. The zoning section that we're looking at here includes the design standards and specifics for what you need to do when you're building a new section or coming in with a zoning permit and you need to make a modification to a particular lot to adhere to that use. I should note one of the biggest things that we've run across was in 19, we adopted the International Traffic Code's standards for how you would calculate what the required parking is for a particular use. It's a very large book essentially that has a number of graphs and calculations in it on peak hour trips for particular uses and what those peak hour trips produce in the way in the need for parking spaces. We've found that for applicants as well as for staff, that sometimes it can be a bit unruly and challenging to derive a correct number from that. So what we're going to be doing and what we are in the process of doing right now is taking those same exact numbers, because we have found that they work well for us, and we're putting them into a very easy to use matrix, like the use matrix that we have, where this is the zoning district it is in, this is the use. Is it permitted? Is it a conditional use? Is it a special exception? Is it an unallowed use? What you'll be seeing is this is the use, this is the required number of parking spaces per table, per square footage. It's actually what you see in a lot of other zoning ordinances, but what we found in the past over the years is technically and anecdotally, by having a lot of older ordinances, it was done by fiat. If you need 2 parking spaces for every table in a restaurant. Well, do you? What if people are coming in a shared car and it's one of the ways that you add up with a lot of over parking, which is something that we, in our comprehensive plan with our shared communities as part of the Southwest Comp Plan, and we as part of the zoning ordinance rewrite exercise in 19, realized we don't want to be overparked anymore as a township. What are we going to do with these really large parking lots that maybe get full once a year, if at all? So what we did and what we are looking to do here is take those numbers from the International Traffic Engineering Organization and put them into an easy-to-use matrix. That will be delivered to you when we're ready to move forward, and there's no changes. It's just the format and how it's shown, and it'll be easy for both our staff and applicants and small business owners who are looking to come to the township and open a small restaurant, open a small store, open a small professional office, what they're going to need to be required to provide in the way of parking. Moving on down, again, one thing that we have found, and this is based off of execution, we see it in the township, we see it in peer communities, temporary uses such as seasonal inventory sales and tent sales that are happening in larger shopping complexes. When the inventory area takes up needed parking spaces, the goal is to just make sure that you don't dip below your required parking spaces. If I'm having a large tent sale and I don't have any parking for it, we're going to have a problem, even if you're trying to sell your outdoor inventory. So that's number 3 that's there. And again, that's based off of what we've seen here.
You go back to number 2 for a second.
Yeah, let's go back to number 2.
Sorry about that.
Yep. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure of with number 2, as far as a change in requirements for the institution and providing of your parking plans, is that a formally designed plan, which is signed, sealed, and stamped by a design professional is included in your application. And the reason we say that is people have kind of just drawn up parking plans themselves and say, these are where our parking spaces are. And it's not technical and it's not enforceable. And the reality is we need to make sure that they're complying with our ordinance. Do you have anything to share, Mr.?
Yeah, so I think we want to really take a little closer look at that. I think when we run into, our business use application, say we have one use, existing use goes to another use, may require one more parking space. I think we need to differentiate when we get a registered design professional included and when we don't, right? So as much as we want to, we had issues in the past, I think we're going to work on this language a little better to try to do that, right? Because I think for what we run into, maybe change of use that may require maybe one more parking space, but that's really the only thing they have to provide to us is a full plan to ask them to to ask a business that needs to put one more parking space in to give us a full plan.
Yeah.
So I think we need to work on that. Get the language a little better on that. I do agree, some larger plans may need that, but some of these smaller plans may not. Chris, do you have anything on that for like a change of use or business use?
No, I was just, I kind of agree both ways, like, it is good to have the language in there to require the plan, but there are instances with small businesses especially where we may only need them to show one other spot or something that they might be able to do on their own, and then we can go field verify and take the measurements to make sure that it does in fact meet the intent, but that's a good idea. We gotta figure out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I think we can do that at the discretion of the zoning officer, or we can put in a number there if you'd like. It's just, again, seeing what we've received in the past by some individuals, it's not acceptable. So,
I think I like the option, but I think if we put in, at the discretion of
yeah.
the department or the township zoning officer, that way we have a little interpretation there.
So how are you currently doing it? How's it currently being done? So, I mean, you get this plan that has a hand-drawn sketch, no standard to it. What are you doing when you get those?
I mean, so for right now, typically the way I handle it is if somebody would provide something, I share with them all of our regulations.
Mhm.
And then they have to include that on whatever plan or sketch that they provide.
Okay, so basically they're getting this done now. They're then going and having someone professionally do
No,
it.
they're usually, for like the small business people, they're just sketching it
They're
themselves.
still staying in a sketch.
themselves.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. If
But the issue that we run into problems is if it's larger scale and something might not be accurate, it might not be drawn to scale.
Yeah.
And then there's an issue.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the bigger stuff I think is probably pretty easy to resolve. The small business one seems like it needs case by case.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of times when these small business, it might be a first-time business owner who just wants to come open up a small shop and they don't, this whole process is kind of
Oh,
new to
yeah,
them,
it's
and
foreign, but yeah.
it can be a little overwhelming. So to have something in there that, some discretion, I would benefit them. We
Okay.
just got to figure out
Yeah.
exactly.
So I have a note for that. We can certainly ensure that there's language in there for the discretion of the department or township zoning officer, but also to make sure that we're getting what we need as people come through. The location of parking spaces on number 8, this is one that was actually a matter of a lot of debate over the years, and we're actually seeing it consistently as far as applications go as well when it comes to especially commercial uses. So again, our Hamilton Boulevard corridor plan calls for it. Our smart growth planning calls for it. Many of our village sections of our zoning ordinance call for it. We want to ensure that we don't have these vast seas of parking in front of the open buildings, and we create more of a community feel, village feel. And here we're just finally adding that language, which is in our design guidelines. It's listed in other sections of the ordinance as well, specifically if you think of the West Coastville zoning district, the ETV3 district, about the importance of where the parking is placed to ensure that we're meeting our planning goals on how the village is built out, how developments are built out, and that they meet our community standards. We're just saying parking spaces shall be primarily located at the sides and the rear of a primary structure on a site, and that handicapped and other minimal parking can be located at the front. The attempt there is to ensure, again, that we don't have 200 parking spaces in front of a commercial use. It's to put it to the side so that the building can be closer to the street so people can see it. And we've had great success on that with Hamilton Boulevard. You can look at the Buckeye Building. You can look at a number of the fit-out buildings that have been done in front of Movie Tavern. You can look at what we're trying to achieve and achieved with the Hamilton Square project, which will eventually be built on Hamilton Boulevard, where the parking isn't necessarily at the rear, but it's at the side, so at least the building is closer to the street, which gives us that feel that we want, that is more pedestrian-oriented, more community-oriented, and in line with our Hamilton Boulevard corridor plan. It respects our neighborhoods, basically. So that's just basically putting into codification something that all of our other documents and other sections of this very ordinance say. So this is like a 5th place for us to point to it in case we get any pushback. Additionally, when we look at parking in reserve, which is another smart parking project planning exercise that we put into place some time ago, where please don't overpark. And if you utilize reserve parking, or you don't think you're going to need as much parking as the ordinance calls for, you can ask for parking in reserve, which means leave a green space over in the corner, and eventually if you need it, then you can pave it. We've had some people take advantage of it, and we've had other people say, well, because of economy of scale, I'm just going to do it all at once. But, as we focus on issues here like stormwater and stormwater runoff, which parking lots create a lot of, we would like it if people didn't have to create more parking spaces than are absolutely necessary. So in the case here where we've made the change on number B, or letter B, the township reserves the right to require parking reserve to be completed at any time by action of the Board of Commissioners. And the reason why we added that is we would likely have a formal resolution or a formal vote by the board. So it's an official action in case we have to go down and do enforcement matters to get someone who took advantage of parking in reserve, but now we're saying, okay, you're very busy, you need parking, and they say, no, we don't want to put it in anymore. Well, this will give us a formal action, and it's in the ordinance then on how we're going to get that formal action so we can get that parking space put in.
Nate, a quick question about that. So, I mean, it's more technical. It's not anything that's written here. So when that parking lot or parking in reserve is set aside, is that already built into their initial NPDS permit? So
Yes.
it's already assumed that it's there, right?
Yes, so we require them in their NPDS permit and for their stormwater calculations to design their basins and their water quality features as if that's going to be there.
Yeah.
So it won't tax any stormwater systems in the future when it does get built. But in the meantime, it does give us grass covered or green area that's basically infiltrating and not being run off.
So, and I guess kind of the follow-up on that is, so, I mean, the permit gets closed out, what is it, after 5 years or whatever the amount of time is. They're always going, so let's say that standard changes, or if, or does it even need to be, reinitiated when they go to, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what is the time frame? It's more technical. It's not related to this. It's just my own understanding.
Right. Well, I mean, it'll be on a recorded plan. The recorded plan, which will have all their third-party permitting and whatnot, is going to show that there are parking spaces that are meant to be here. It's just they're in reserve and can be placed in the future. So all the reviewing authorities, and again, I would actually defer to Mr. McAdam if he has anything to add on this as well, but the site's being designed as if that impervious coverage is going to be there. The plan is recorded as if that impervious coverage is going to be there. It's just the township and the landowner are agreeing that we don't need it yet. We may need it never. And it's better for the site if we don't have to put it in. But if we do, everything's in place and it's done under a permit, assuming that it's going to be there.
Yeah. No, I'm all good on that. I don't need more explanation. I don't want to derail what the progress is. I was just curious.
Yeah,
Okay.
If I
Right,
may,
please.
and Wes, this can be quick. What can be done or has been done in other townships, is if a reserve area is shown on the approved plan, we do, as Nate appropriately pointed out, we do make sure that the stormwater management system is designed to accommodate that additional impervious. And then if the applicant decides to build it after the NPDES permit is closed out, whatever, 3-4 years later, the township could handle it via some sort of grading permit. That's something we're working on as well. And then, and frankly, dependent on how big that reserve area is, would determine whether it needed to go back to the conservation district or not. This kind of thing is, in my experience in Lower Macungie, it's something that it's a case-by-case thing. Applicants I've seen in Lower Macungie and other townships, it definitely depends on who's doing the construction, who's doing the building, like what developer it is, what their intentions are. I don't know that it's something that comes up often enough that it would be problematic for the township. But we certainly, between the zoning ordinance and anything we do change or add to saldo or permitting, the intention would be that everything would be documented so that at the least the stormwater management design and any kind of zoning compliance for impervious surface would be addressed with the land development plan approval. And then how that extra parking was added, we would handle again on a case-by-case basis, depending on the size. I think the whole idea is to build in flexibility and basically just smart planning and smart design.
Got it. So it's similar to a deferral when we give for a sidewalk or something like that. It's recorded, it's in there, and we'll address it as it comes up, basically.
Yeah, but deferrals, the designs are not particularly factored in. This would be something where it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate or Vince or perhaps Mark, but this wouldn't particularly be a deferral. You're getting approval to show the parking, that would be done as needed. It's not necessarily deferral as opposed to sidewalk deferral or curb deferral or something like that. That would be done at a later date. I just think they're different aspects.
Okay.
Does this imply that the applicant still builds their minimum zoning ordinance required parking? And then this is additional parking? Or if some place is required to have 200 parking spaces, they want to say, we only want to build 150. Is this what this refers to?
So yeah, we do have a process for that, where if through the ITE manual, we find that there are a lot, say it says you need 200 parking spaces, and they say, well, we feel that we will get by with 175 and it won't be a problem. They can ask to utilize the parking in reserve exercise. The parking in reserve, though, has to be reviewed and approved by the township engineer, by township staff, and the Board of Commissioners. And then basically, kind of like a deferral, the Board of Commissioners can call it in if it's necessary. Yep. So there is a measure of multiple layers of review saying, okay, you can do this. Just like if you look at the next section here, it says, applicants shall not construct more parking than is required by the zoning ordinance, because we do not want them to go and say, well, listen, I really need 400 parking spaces here, and everybody's doing a formal engineering review saying, every technical aspect of this says you're only going to need 200. Why do you need to double it? Well, that's just our business model. Yes, but that's a whole lot of impervious coverage that's not necessary when we're trying to be sensitive to stormwater in our township. And, wise land use, because once you pave it, that's it. It's paved for forever. So, moving on, I would say with number 11 right here, this is an item, and Mr. Tranguch, Mr. Russo, please chime in at your pleasure on this. One of the issues that we have had as a community is the parking of very large commercial vehicles throughout the township and the enforcement in how to handle that. We have dealt with particularly large commercial vehicles being parked on public streets, private residences in each and every type of zoning district that you could imagine, which poses life safety and welfare risks to bikers and pedestrians and other vehicle operators within a neighborhood, for instance, or in the case of some commercial uses, long-term or parking of large commercial vehicles in commercial parking lots overnight or for several days at a time where it's inappropriate. And we're just looking to continue to try and get a hold on that. It's something that many of us and our peer communities in the Lehigh Valley deal with. And this language right here just kind of does, again, tighten it up in terms of property where on a public or private street right of way, which is something that we've dealt with in a couple of our neighborhoods. I think it's self-explanatory, but again, I would hand it off to our zoning officer and our department director to illuminate that issue a little bit more, but it is something that we've experienced that we're trying to get a hold on. And it's something that our ordinance speaks to, right? This isn't us implementing a new policy. It's us adding language to make it crystal clear in what the intent is here in the execution of the ordinance.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing we may look at is the tons. We may look at that, bump that up a little bit now.
Bump that up.
Some
Seems very,
pickups are like 3 tons anyway.
Suburban's like
6,000
tons.
pounds,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, I think, a class 3 vehicle, according to, the motor vehicle code is 10,000 or more. I think we may look at that. So that'd be 5 ton, maybe 5. I think the other thing is we just, has been an issue, and I think this is somewhere good to start. And Nate, just a typo, I have a written note for USC. I'm not sure. We'll just have to look and clear up those districts. That's all.
You got it. All right, moving forward, again, this is just simple, regular comment. If you look at E2, which I have up on the screen, every parking area shall include an adequate turnaround and navigation for delivery trucks, garbage trucks, maintenance vehicles, and the like. We look at that under any type of land development or project that comes in anyway. It's an unspoken, it's a requirement of good design. We've now put it in zoning as well to make sure that it's very clear in parking areas and in these areas, we have those spaces and we can call it out when we're doing our zoning reviews. There has been a question regarding EV spaces, and this has been back and forth, and this note has existed since 2020 when we were having look-back language discussions on Zoom via COVID, when people were sheltering at home, and we were talking about the adequate and proper number for the requirement of charging stations per number of spaces. And we were saying, you know, what would be a good number? And it has come up on a couple of occasions that 1 per 75 would be reasonable in a parking lot area. And then the parking lots or courts with at least 50 spaces provide a minimum of 1, just because obviously we're getting a growing number of these electrical vehicles that require charging. Previously, the number was smaller, so you were having smaller developments having to put these in, and we did recognize that, you know, it's better to just have the larger ones be able to put them in just because of the cost associated with the charging station and where people do tend to park long-term to charge them. And even then, we've had people ask for deferrals on their installation. And then at a point in time, that deferral can get called in, and they can, you know, they put the conduit in and then they eventually put the actual charger in. So this is, again, the product of a lot of discussion for the better part of 5 years now. So previously, we felt like 75 was a good number, but I'm happy to take further input if people would like to modify that number at all.
I don't think it's clear.
Yeah, I don't either.
I remember the property with the car wash on Hamilton. This came across our table, and I just think, are you saying that if I have 150 spaces, I need 2? Because the way it reads right now, I could need 300 spaces, I only need 1. Because you're saying 75 spaces or more.
Right, so we can change it to, the intent is the intervals of 1 per 75, therefore, if I have 150, I will need 2. So we can change it, and
Yeah.
this is the beauty of having it here on Word. We can say
You could
1,
use the same language as you do for like an accessible parking space. You need 1 per 100 up to a certain amount, and then, so,
Take it back type of language, right,
mhm,
from code.
yeah.
Yeah, because in previous times when we've explained it, I mean, the car wash was the one that I was thinking of. It actually, it's been explained very clearly, and it never seems like it is confusing when it's told, but when I read it here, I had to think about if I understood it, so
right.
something here makes that, I think what you're saying makes sense, but I didn't find it clear
So
yet.
are we going with 75 or 50?
Well, and I guess that's the thing. We can make 75 the magic number for 50. It's just, again, if I have a parking lot or a parking court with at least 50 spaces, I have to give 1. But then when you transition to a larger parking facility for, say, a shopping center, it would be 1 per 75, which then gives it a little bit of a downshift in terms of the numbers that they have to put together. So we can say 1 per 50 in a smaller parking lot, right? If I have 50, I need at least 1. If I'm in a supermarket parking lot where I have 400 spaces, then it's 1 per 75.
I almost think it should be 2 points. And then
Okay,
it becomes very clear.
okay. I like
I
that.
mean, does that make,
Yeah, I think there's too much ambiguity with smaller parking lot, large parking lot.
because I think it's a very forward thinking. I think it's a very important piece to have in now, especially in the scenarios where the conduit can get run now, even if the station isn't there. That whole process, I think, is beneficial. So having this part be clear, I think also helps when someone comes who's like, why are we doing this? You know, they can see what
Absolutely.
the expectation is universally.
Is
So I have a note for that, and I like the idea of making it two separate notes, because I think we need to differentiate, because again, we're dealing with two different types of
Yeah.
uses. A physician's office might only have 50 parking spaces, but again, not that we're expecting to see any more in the township, but if you were to get a large commercial development, have hundreds of spaces, you know, you want to have a reasonable amount. And again, 1 per 50 we found was a little bit high, or I'm sorry, a little bit low to require many more. And that's one of the reasons why I think at the time, everybody felt 1 per 75, jumping up to a larger interval would require less parking spaces and be more reasonable. So we can try and differentiate between the two, and what I'll do is I'll make them 2 different points.
Are there any other municipalities around here that have this in their ordinance?
Well, what I found is when we do see the regulatory process for them, there are some sections, literally sections, that speak to EV ordinances and how they're done. And it's very, very regulated with a lot of language. And then in other ones, because sometimes they're done from a commercial aspect where they're done at banks at a time. Be happy to take an updated look, but when we did look, when we were writing it the last time around, I presumed, and we felt that just an interval in terms of parking would be sufficient, just because it just makes it clear at that point in time. You almost treat them like you treat them like like an accessibility or handicap parking spot, where this is just how many you need, if you're going to have a business of this size, so.
For what it's worth, as somebody that's been asked the question about the charging spaces by engineers putting land development plans together, I think, Nate, if you could roll back to what were just showing.
I have it right here, but I did
yeah.
already split it up in 2 sections.
No, but what I'm driving at is the ordinance currently says electric charging stations shall be provided at a rate of 1 per 75 spaces in all parking lots or courts, period. That's it. I think what you're showing right now and the discussion that's, come about, I think what's shown on screen right now dramatically helps achieve what you're trying to get. The 1 per 75 for the larger space, larger parking lots, I think is probably pretty reasonable. But by clarifying it in 2 sections and saying if you have at least 50 spaces, you got to provide 1 charging station. Unless everyone feels that we need more, to lower that threshold of 50 spaces, I think this should probably meet the intent extremely well and significantly clear up what's currently in the ordinance. Just for what it's worth.
I don't think it's clear.
And also, is there any?
Sorry, I just don't, because now you have 2. So like if I was a developer and I came in and I said, my parking lot has 60 spaces,
Yeah.
well, I still have to provide one, but then if I have to they have 76, am I providing 2?
Because essentially there's 25 that are unrepresented in this entire.
Yeah, how do I know if I'm on the 50 or the 75? So you're saying like at 50, I'm gonna provide 1, and then if I was at 125 spaces, I'd provide 2? That's what the intent?
Well, what if item 2 was revised to say parking lots? Because I understand what you're saying. What if it said parking lots and courts with at least 50 spaces shall provide a minimum of 1 electric charging station, at the discretion of the township zoning officer, or something like that, to give the township some flexibility and to answer that question about what if I'm at 51 spaces? You say it says at least 50. Well, you have 51 spaces, you got to provide 1 charging station. I don't know if that's kind of helps to say at the discretion of the township or not. But I don't know, be honest, the way it's shown, I think it helps. Certainly relative to what it currently says in the ordinance.
Yeah, I'd rather not leave it to the discretion. We want to put it in black and white.
Yeah.
We don't have to make that interpretation, right?
No, that's fine, but I guess this already says it. Parking lots with at least 50 spaces shall provide a minimum of 1 charging station.
I think we're looking to make it as clear as possible, to tell you the truth. The reality is, if you're going to be putting these in many cases, they are putting them in banks, and it is being done in a for-profit business partnership type of situation.
Yeah.
With property owners and businesses. So I think for us to spin our wheels over the 75 per 50, you have to remember that this was written 6 or 7 years ago at this point, when this was really just starting to take off, and we wanted to make sure that we were prepared for the future when these vehicles were here and how many would be necessary. What we found is that businesses are now voluntarily putting them in, either at their company place of business. Certain supermarkets have them voluntarily right out front, and other larger areas that are owned by commercial real estate firms that might be the landlords to a bunch of tenant businesses are putting in banks of them because they recognize that it's necessary and that it attracts customers. So there's definitely been a market niche for it. And this was written at a time when we were trying to do our best to make sure that we were prepared for the future and advocating for it, recognizing that EV vehicles were coming. Have they come at the level that we've expected? Who knows? But I can say this, if we're looking to be clear, I think the easiest thing to do then is everybody was very comfortable a couple of years ago with that 75 number. And we just say, okay, 75. If you have 75 spaces, and then, every other 75 that you get, you need to have another one. So if we drop below 50 and you don't have one, then you don't have one. But if we're looking for consistently, we should just do that. It's just, I think the blade will swing both ways, in that if we do 1 per 75, some of our smaller developments that get proposed are not going to have a charging station. Whereas if we make it 50 and at a rate of 1 per 50, we're going to hear from larger developers who do a bigger development come in and say, well, if I'm proposing 200 parking spaces, you mean I need to put 4 of these chargers in now? And we're going to say, yes, that's what the ordinance says. So I
Yeah.
think it's really up to the will of the planning commission on which it should be.
Yeah, so why don't we just say, at, minimum, I agree, I think it should be 50, right? That's what we're striving for here to go towards. So we say a minimum, at least at 50 spaces shall provide one, and then 1 per 75 thereafter. So,
If there's 76 parking spaces, do I need 2?
Yes, you would.
well, the way it's written, yes, you would need to.
Is there any consideration on the type of business? Like, I could see an office building, someone being there for 8 or 9 hours, it'd be more frequently used as opposed to a grocery store, for example.
I think the challenge that we face there is someone comes in with a 9 to 5 office or a grocery store, and in 15 years or 10 years, that use changes and something else is in there. But once that infrastructure is in, that's it. So if we start regulating it on a use, it means that the zoning officer, every time a new use is going to come in, is going to say, well, it looks like you've changed from being a doctor's office where people are coming and going all day to a full-time regular business office. You're now going to need to put in another charging station. So I think at the time of development or site redevelopment is when we should nail it down and then just be comfortable with it at that point in time, because otherwise it's going to become something that's cyclical, that as a use turns over, as a business turns over, we have to administer this numerous times.
So I guess so first of all, to answer your question, I was down at Costco on Sunday and in Limerick. And last time I was there was almost 7 months ago. They didn't have any charging stations. Now they have 8. Okay. So they retrofitted to do that because they saw the need for that. And they were all being used. Second thing is, why don't we just change it to 50? Every 50 spaces, you have to have a charging station. I'm not getting the complexity. You're going to put a bank in. Two more is not going to cost you that much more. And you're going to get paid for it on the end result anyway, because you're not paying. Whoever who's providing the charging stations is going to provide station. Just a person.
And 50 is what we had previously.
50 is what we had
Yeah,
previously.
that was the old
Seven-
standard.
The current ordinance is 75.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The current ordinance is 75. My
Current
apologies.
Ordinance is 1 per 75.
1%, not 1.
What do you think about that? I just don't, we're getting more and more EVs.
Yeah,
It
it's not.
doesn't make any sense to make it, if we're going to do it going forward.
Yeah.
That's why I asked about the other municipalities. What number do they?
How about this, I think, because we could probably spend a lot of time on this.
What do you mean?
How about we'll check with some of our peer communities, and when we deliver this to you again, we'll come back with something that staff fully has vetted and is comfortable with recommending to you, that is also in line with what some of our neighbors here regionally in the valley and our peer communities are doing as far as EV charging station goes.
Yeah, so
All right.
one last comment, then I don't want to belabor this, but like I'm from the code guy
Give us
side.
more.
And like what, Chris and I always struggle with on, that side is the interpretation is like, so if you look in chapter 11 accessibility of the 2018 IBC, there's a chart, 1 to 25, 1 accessible space, 25 to 50, 2 accessible spaces. So I think we could look at it a little more like that.
I mean, Ryan said that right away. and I
Right.
think that is exactly how it should be, because then there's no question. You get an
There's
answer.
no interpretation.
There's no questions. All right,
chart
I had
also-
26 spaces. I know exactly what I need to do.
That chart also, it's like 1 per 50 after a certain point, you need less. So it's like, I think there should be something built into it as well, because if you have a monster parking lot, you're gonna need a ton of EV charging stations, which is good, but
Well, actually,
They can always ask for a variance too. Like, if they don't want
They-
to put them in, if they have a huge parking lot and they're gonna have to put in 20,
yeah.
they can always go back and say, there's no way we need 20. Can we do 10? And the zoning hearing board can say, sure, if they want.
Yeah, I think we will look at some standards,
Yeah.
see what.
I
what
think
it-
it's simple to just make it, pick the number. if you like.
right, and I think that's maybe where the
And then
debate is
just-
here. I mean, I like the idea of a little higher density. I think that that's more progressive in where things are going to go. So the 50, thought 50 was actually a good number, and
All right.
And the-
Consistent with progress, going more towards more electric. Why would you stick? with
yeah.
that?
I mean, it's a complete unknown, but
Yeah.
of how we'll use them. Like, I mean, do cars become so efficient that you never do it and you act, I'm just doing all this at your house, when a
Right.
car gets 900 miles on a.
Not to keep
So-
going on this, but
No, more, give us more.
the words at least, can we clarify that to be like 50 or more, or
I
a
think the-
minimum? of
I
50?
think I want to go towards, that chart seems
Yeah,
like the
chart.
most,
Chart, I'm in for chart.
I mean, we can do the chart, sure, but I definitely will look at this after like the concept is decided and the language will change. Like I can tell you that I've never read anything that I didn't change. So
Perfect.
it'll change.
Okay.
So it's more the concept of how many you want per, I think is the most important thing. And if you're thinking 50, then it can be one sentence or a chart that focuses on 50, then the next 50,
And-
and then the next 50.
And we could make a suggestion and it'll easily change when it gets to the
It'll change
board,
again,
so.
for sure. It'll change.
So while we're on parking and spaces, we didn't bring this up, Nate, but I want to bring it up tonight. So because we had proposed no changes, however, it's just kind of a question. Our parking width is 9.5 feet.
Man.
What we've seen in land development plans is when you go by the ANSI accessibility standards, minimum size for a handicap accessible space is 8 feet with a 5-foot accessible aisle. I always had an issue, well, regular parking spaces are 9.5,
Right.
but people are putting in 8 foot for handicap. It's a standard, and we've never addressed that, so think about it,
Is,
and
is your recommendation that parking width become?
I'm
8
just
feet?
throwing it out there.
8 feet.
No, I don't think we should change our parking standard.
Okay.
I'm
I
just
see.
saying, engineers, say,
Yeah.
say there's 100 spots, that's 4 that are accessible. You're picking up 1.5 feet on every
Yeah.
space.
Got it.
It's come up a couple times. We push it a little bit and we said, no, just go by the standards.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any,
This is
has,
like
anybody has any
the standard?
comment? No, by the ANSI standard for the handicap. So we did not make them do the handicap.
But ANSI says minimum base, right?
Correct.
So then if they come,
So they
does this
should
have any jurisdiction?
comply.
It's more? I know you can't go less.
Yeah, I don't think it's clearly spelled out. And we didn't push it on a couple land development.
Okay,
Sorry.
with another couple of sections here, just to clear up, some of the, again, the red language, which is new language, things that we've seen and items that we wanted to make sure that we take care of. Parking areas for industrial uses shall include separators and intercept oil, spills for entering waterways. This is something that we saw on a case-by-case basis from some of our other land developments, but we just want to make it clear, if you're in an industrial zone, you're going to put that in, period. It's just basic safe practice because they are moving oils and chemicals and whatnot, and we're just looking to make sure that that's taken care of. So that's just a basic thing that honestly has been a township practice for a while now. And this way, we won't necessarily even need to put it in comment letters anymore. It's in the ordinance because you're an industrial zone. Also, M, so when we were putting in the design guidelines, there was the election of proceeding forward with either a street wall or shrubbery when you are blocking headlights. And we all know in a couple months from now, the sun's going to set at 4:30, and everybody's going to be out and they're going to be shopping or getting dinner or whatnot. It's going to be dark, and we have vehicles that have augmented headlights or light bars or raised up, and glare into the street is a health, safety, and welfare thing as people are driving. One of the things that we're looking to do is get away from the shrub situation, because those shrubs we found die where they might not grow as fast as we want them to, and we're not going to get the added effect of what we're trying to achieve, which is blocking those headlights. And the recommendation at this point is just the 3-foot tall masonry wall when you're doing a commercial or basically any non-residential use when you're doing a development, so that you're not having headlights for several months of the year shoot out into the street. Again, this is augmented headlights or factory vehicle headlights that are now just much brighter than they used to be. And it's just making sure that all the light, just like we try to do with the parking standard lights and parking lots, where we're requiring them to be dark sky compliant and have shrouds, that's this for vehicles in the township. So I understand that there's an added cost to the masonry street wall, but on the flip side, we have seen that a lot of the shrubs that people have elected to install, they're taking really long to grow, or they might not be providing the level of coverage that we're looking to get. So that is another one. And then, of course, we just want to make sure that they put in the ornamental stuff in terms of in front of it to meet the design guidelines, because we're looking for that design excellence from everybody. You know, with that, I don't think we have too many more, other than the fact that this is more or less a requirement anyway. But again, it's doubling back on something that's required generally out of your third-party permit, which is drainage from parking areas shall be directed to adequate stormwater management systems or on-site BMPs, i.e. it's not just going to run off and go nowhere, because it shouldn't just run off and go nowhere. It needs to be directed somewhere. Easy enough. Here's one that's a little bit longer. All parking spaces in public or private drives shall be at least 5 feet from any side or rear lot line or within the required buffer yard, whichever is more restrictive. This is specifically to make sure that we're respecting our buffer spaces. And then should the separate use or share parking lines or access to the adjacent lots involving the areas, such as in the West Coastville district, with new or expanded, that they meet the design guidelines. I mean, basically all we're really saying here is that people aren't jamming parking spaces in, especially in areas like West Coastville where we have relaxed buffer areas, and trying to say, well, look here, I fit a spot here and I fit a spot here, and it's clear that that's not good design. It's a little bit wordy, but that's specifically because we have a number of design issues that have come up with multiple land developments where people have put parking spaces where they said, well, there's nothing in the ordinance that says I can't put a parking space here. And we've had that happen. And it's like, well, that's still not a good spot for a parking space, ladies and gentlemen. So. We bumped the deciduous caliper of the tree for the trees within parking areas up to 3 inches minimum instead of the 2.5. And also, because we're dealing with this on a regular basis, ones with root systems that are not going to heave our parking lots up, because I'm sure you've driven through a bunch of parking lots in the township where the routes are basically causing you to bump when you drive over them. So we're just making it part of zoning, that it's official, that the township engineer who has RLA on staff will review it and make sure that that tree in 15, 20 years is not going to be messing up parking lots.
Going back to C,
Yeah.
what was the previous number? It says 2 parking spaces.
Yeah, be interrupted by a planting island with a previous equal width of 2 parking spaces. I believe that it was 3, and I think we took it down to lower. No more than 20 parking spaces shall be permitted in a continuous row without being interrupted by a parking island with an equivalent width of 2 parking spaces. I take that back. I think it was just 1 space, and we made it 2 so that the parking island is not ridiculously small. Because basically the standard for the township for adoption has been, everybody likes how wide and walkable the Hamilton Boulevard, or I'm sorry, the Hamilton Crossings parking islands are, and that setup. So it's really just trying to replicate that. And I do believe it was 1 parking space. And again, that's tight. That's like enough for a hedgerow. Whereas if you have 2, if you go to Hamilton Crossings, we have the interpretive signage. There's a walking path. I wish more people would use it instead of just walking through the parking lot, but that's what they do. And there's even enough space where we have some of our stormwater BMPs. E, again, we're going back to just making sure, in short, this is stuff from our design guidelines, and we're codifying it to make sure that we get what we want. Because people have said to us in the past, well, the design guidelines are, an extra adopted thing, but there are a number of things that we would wish to be able to say, we don't encourage you to do. This is the expectation for future development, redevelopment in the township to make sure we're getting developments of excellence. And that is, in turn, especially along Hamilton Boulevard, what we're looking for. And B, it's a little bit long. I do apologize, but this is really laying out, again, the expectation for what these parking areas are going and loading areas are going to look like in terms of the solid masonry wall, the ornamental vegetation, the minimum of the 3 feet high wall, what a fence may be made of, what a fence may not be made of, what's specifically not allowed. And again, what the walls will be made of. We want the brick, we want the field stone or similar masonry products, et cetera. It's codifying our design guidelines. C is the same thing, codifying the design guidelines, unless you have any other questions. And that's it. And that was one that I thought wouldn't take as long as it did, so I apologize, but I do appreciate the robust discussion on some of those topics.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
1E2. For maintenance vehicles, does that include emergency? Or is that the and like? Or can we add emergency?
We can if you want, yeah.
Which one's that?
Which one?
Um,
Guess you're basically saying when they have like a fire, when we do the fire truck.
Yeah.
races and Stuff, basically putting that in that
Yeah.
language there.
So we have it in zoning. It's the requirement of the life safety plan. So a life safety plan is supposed to show our largest fire apparatus truck and its turning template, where the location of fire hydrants and fire department hookups are going to be on structures. But again, for consistency purposes, we have that in the saldo. If we have it in the zoning, then it's in 2 spaces. I have absolutely no problem. I mean, we already have all those other vehicles in there. Adding emergency vehicle, no problem. Does anybody have any other questions or comments about the parking section or ideas on other things that we could add? Okay. Let's head to signs. On this one, I would like to note that we would be, and I would be very welcoming if we have any comments from Vince or Chris on this as well, because again, many of the changes that you see here in the sign revision section are based off of our review and issuance of permits in particular, and then also what gets proposed as part of signs for land development. And again, these are really just, as I've said at the beginning, tightening up language that we have already had on the books and just making it very clear so that when we either deny a permit or we are issuing a permit, we have the ability to do so in a way that's in line with what the expectation of how our plans and planning documents as well as our ordinance is written and what we're looking to do. So I'll start with point number 5, page 2. We're talking about on-premise freestanding signs here. So that's the, the sign that you get when you open a new business and say you have 2 or 3 tenants. We're saying if it's not a monument sign, and we've talked a lot about those are the signs that have the masonry around them, the brick and the stone, which is really the standard that we're looking to achieve in the township. But if someone's looking to put those in, if we're doing a monument sign, and it in a commercial or an industrial district, and it includes any portion of a sign within 20 feet of an ultimate right of way, that it'll have a minimum height of 6 feet of vertical clearance. And the reason for that's pretty simple. It's so that it doesn't get hit for vehicles. Easy as that. Number 6, any type of sign or regulation in this section that is abandoned or not advertised or announcing a new business, it's basic. The longer that it's been there and you don't touch it, eventually it loses its protection and you'll have to put in a new sign that meets our standards. So we're not stuck with a sign that's 40 years old that is derelict, and that we can get a new sign that meets our expectations as a community. On D, we removed advertising and it said no sign except official, political, or public service signs shall be erected on property, which it doesn't relate. And that's really just based off of some case law to our understanding. The same goes with monument signs. We're talking about digital to LED signs, which of course are now becoming part and parcel. And that's something that we're dealing with on a fairly regular basis. I would note as we move forward with this, in the second batch of language that we're looking at for zoning, we will probably in the lighting section take some of the LED language and move it to the sign section because it has to do with signage, but we need to make sure that there's no cross-referencing issues or issues where their language conflicts. Here again, we're just talking about LED signs and in the monument signs and making sure that they're done properly since other people are looking to do it. Another thing I should note is where we've narrowed down the type of material we're looking to see for the monument signs, and we've essentially said other masonry material, but we got rid of stucco because stucco, while it's nice, can have its issues, especially if it wears over time or it starts to crack. So it'll keep us from having to do enforcement in the future, and we've really liked the stone and the brick signs that we've gotten over the past couple of years. Beyond that, again, we have banners, and we're talking about them adhering to all township ordinances. It's just catch-all stuff for enforcement. Flashing, blinking, and animated signs, which have always been regulated as not allowed in the township, only to indicate for the use of time or temperature unless you go to the zoning hearing board for other use. This section specifically regulates window signs. So we've said window signs in the past, but now we're saying signs affixed to buildings, freestanding signs. We want to make sure that we're covering everything. And then, of course, we say, unless, of course, it's holiday season signs, because people will argue that. Again, avoidance of doubt. This is for holiday season signs, or they're exempt. One thing that we did see in other peer communities that we wanted to make sure that we handled is we've always covered balloons. And now we're including inflatable characters and other inflatable mimicking balloon structures in shape or form, i.e. large inflatable animals, large inflatable characters, the motor run flailing characters. Yeah, that. That's more or less the long and short of it. And again, if you get down to page 11 here, you see where we start talking about signs permitted in other districts. And this is the AP, the rural district, the SR district, the U and urban district. And we just note the importance of what is allowed to be put in those districts under certain circumstances. And this is essentially to just make sure that we're hitting all of our bases, specifically with the monument signs and the pole projection signs. Wall and window signs in West Coastville, when permitted, they can also have an additional wall sign. And that's just because they're in pre-existing structures. So if you have a window sign for, I have a seafood store, you have a sign in the window and you can still have a sign above the window on the structure. Again, we're regulating the monument signs and the pole signs as well as the LED monument signs. Again, this is specifically to make sure that we're not looking at a situation where if I'm in the Village Overlay District or West Coastville Commercial District, if I own a business, I can have those types of signs. And then we go into Commercial District and do the same exact thing. So we're just looking for consistency across the districts. And then we had a couple of language changes here to make sure that we're looking at, and this is based off of our staff notes, not advertising signs, but billboard signs in particular, and how we regulate our billboard signs. One and the same, it's just to make sure that we have continuity with our execution and our enforcement. And then, of course, we had this language here, and this was from a lot of our discussions back in 2020. So this is a bit of older language that we're now reviewing formally for the first time. All lights shall be controlled by automatic timers and shall not be on between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. the following day. And that's to just make sure that we don't have situations where lights are blasting all night long and that we have dimming.
That's for any sign or just LED sign? Any sign?
That is specifically says for billboard signs may only be illuminated using internal lights or external fixtures. So we're basically, we're putting some times on them to just make sure that for quality of life in the community.
Okay, so it's all of them. I mean, there's LED billboards and
Yep.
regular billboards that are lit. Yeah, static billboards.
Static, yep.
That's both of them. Correct.
And again, that's something that we're going to review a little bit further, but it was something that's been discussed like 3 or 4 times, and previous editions of the Planning Commission said, I'm driving around at 2 or 3 in the morning and I'm like, it's like a moth to a flame, or, and it's incredibly bright. What can we do to make sure that that's not impacting residents who live close by or creating light pollution, basically? And then just here, so you can see it, and this will be in the future iteration, a new subsection that we take from the lighting section to import the LED. That won't be a part of this package for adoption. It'll be part of a future. And that's really the extent of the signage changes. And again, that is all based off of our staff reviews, staff notes, and enforcement over the last couple of years of the 19 ordinance, getting out there and having to issue permits or write violations. So if anybody has any comments or questions, I'm happy to take them. And listen, tonight, if you don't think of anything now, or you didn't have a note for it, but you've been thinking about it after we talk about it tonight, or it comes to you a week or 2 from now, please get in contact with me and we can add it in, because I want to make sure that, we only get a chance to pass this once and not have to go through the exercise all over again. So if someone has a good idea or points out an issue, let's do it now. Make sure that we get it.
So, and it's probably highlighted in the LED language about, so most of those LED signs have a daylight setting, which is exceedingly bright. And then I see them occasionally, and this was kind of similar to what you were just talking about, is where they remain in that daylight setting. They don't trigger to go down to the nighttime setting, which
Right.
is much dimmer.
Right.
Is there language that requires that?
That's what we're
Like a
looking
dim
at
light.
with the next one. Yeah, because
Okay.
we have some certain sections of language where we'd be looking to do that. And if you feel that there's a way, if you prefer for us to find a way to fit that in right now, we can.
No, if
but
it's highlighted because that's a specific topic, I mean, it would make the most sense to be there, and it obviously applies to everything that is LED, and they're universally defined as LED signs, so.
I
that-
mean, the goal is for static billboard signs and the LED billboard signs, making sure that they're appropriately dimmed during the off hours so that they're not creating a safety or a nuisance or
Yeah.
anything.
And I mean, really, those LED, almost all billboards are going to LED lighting, which has a dimmable, they're not, the sign isn't LED, but the lighting is LED, and almost all of them have dimmable. I was just reading a thing about the city of Pittsburgh, which is going to, at a certain hour, all over they're changing all their lights to LED, and they're actually going to dim down to like 30% of their full brightness, so that you just sort of have all this light pollution.
Yep.
So in that, maybe something that specifies the
Absolutely.
requirement.
I just thought, thinking about billboards, I looked at the definition, it says a large freestanding advertising sign. We want to define what large means.
I mean, we could, if we want to go back to the definition section and put, the best way to define a large sign is going to be to do a square footage. And so we have billboard signs in the township that are not that large. And we have, that are on older roads that have been there for decades. And then we have the newer ones that are owned by larger companies, and they're absolutely huge. So what we would need to do is put a minimum to it and say, this size and under, or this size and over qualifies as a billboard. And on that one, I would probably want to have a quick discussion with the township solicitor and the township department director for community development and our zoning officer, say, you know, all right, what is legally defensible and administratively reasonable to be the threshold to be qualified as a billboard? Because that is also, there are companies that are, you know, billboard companies that are a big part of our business community, and we need to be mindful of how they operate within this atmosphere with us in our township as well.
I mean, I think you could say something that's not classified as any other type of sign within that district, right? Because most other signs give a maximum square foot, like
They do.
freestanding
Yeah.
sign in whatever district is like, you know, highway commercial is 150 square feet, right? Not to exceed 150 square feet. Anything over that, you go, you say would have to classify it as a billboard. I don't know, you know. something to look at.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to look at the billboard stuff. Is it billboard companies that get regulated for really like that? So,
Yeah.
what those-
Especially because there's almost no new billboards. I mean, they're working with a pretty fixed supply, so I
Yeah.
can see why they would do that.
Yeah, and from our perspective, we're really just, again, looking to make sure, and this is based off of, you know, a lot of feedback we've received, but it's all comes down to health, safety, and welfare at the end of the day, so. Okay, the last section is for our commercial districts, and this is where we did find that we had a fair amount of notes. And this is, again, all from the administrative end of things. So, you know, we have our commercial district itself, and this is actually the last section that we'll be covering tonight, and also has some of the least amount of modification. So they're really small changes. For instance, the minimum lot area in a commercial district, there was discussion at one point, previously it was more acreage, and previous edition of the Planning Commission talked about 2 acres, which I think was down from 5, and that was because we had some smaller sites. Whether that is ever taken advantage of, we shall see. We wanted to make sure that this was in here. In the past, utility features shall be shielded from a view, and that's just because we've made sure, or tried to make sure during the process that, you know, large HVAC units and whatnot aren't visible from roofs, so we're just looking for shielding, which is just general good design practices. That's a note in there as well now to make sure that these uses, when it comes to their lot coverage and their maximum height and size, there's the recognition that they're going to have the shielding in there, and that's a design element. One thing that we did find in our execution of the ordinance with some developments was the institution of faux storefronts on Hamilton Boulevard and elsewhere, because the actual storefront was facing somewhere else. And we were getting essentially kind of like a Mickey Mouse effect with some of the design. And that's where we've heard from this planning commission, prior editions of the planning commission, and had a lot of number of discussions about this. All buildings shall utilize a functional traditional storefront facing the street or public road. That means If you're facing the street, it's the expectation you're going to have a door to go in the business there. If that means that you have to have double entrance and double exit, then so be it. It's just so that we do not have the rear of structures facing Hamilton Boulevard or Route 100. That's where the front should sit. That is the best view for both patrons of that business as well as for community quality and design excellence. And it gets us away from a discussion that we've been having previously, which is, people offering to put in fake items to make it look real instead of just doing the real thing and properly placing their building on a site so that it respects the community and respects the neighborhood. So that's something that we've been asked to do, and now we're putting it into the language, and that's been discussed through conditional uses and a number of projects. Everything else here, Hamilton Boulevard, you see the street law language, that's just tying it in with some of the other things that we've looked at. Roof-mounted, non-residential HVAC systems shall be shielded in terms of the design guidelines are approved by the township zoning officer. Again, we're just trying to make the design guidelines as enforceable as possible. Looking at the West Coastville district, there's always the should and the shall. The should is, it would be great if you did it. The shall is you are going to do it. So one thing that we did say here is that when you look at the West Coastville district, a traditional neighborhood setting, the design in the district shall reflect and respect the historic West Coastville and Lower Macungie Township, i.e. you're going to fit into the neighborhood and not look like something that just plopped in there, because previously it said should, and someone could say, well, that doesn't meet our branding. We don't want to do it. And it doesn't match the neighborhood. We created West Coastville Commercial to try and preserve it, because historically a lot of those buildings were getting bought up and then getting torn down and turned into strip malls. So we want to just stick with the mission. Residential apartments above or within structures on a first floor commercial use. That's just listing it as an accessory use, because it's always been a discussion point about if I have a single family house on in West Coastville and I turn the first floor into an office, can I turn the second floor into an apartment? That was one of the purposes for the creation of that district. You have to have the parking for it. You have to adhere to the design guidelines. But we added I back in 2020 with respect to this, specifically because we wanted to make it clear that that was in existence. And obviously, if that's a topic for debate or we want to talk about further, let's do it. All buildings shall employ the use of traditional storefront. Again, this is, you are going to, especially in the West Coastville district, you are going to have your storefront face Hamilton Boulevard, and it is going to look like the neighborhood, and it is not going to be some sort of, camouflaged type of situation where you're trying to make one thing happen, but it's not really it.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that, Nate. So the current language that was changed on both this and the commercial says shall have the appearance of a traditional storefront. And we
Yep.
want to make that clear that the storefront shall front on public road.
Yep. So it shall employ the use of a traditional storefront.
Could we just make that the building shall front on a public road?
You could have a door on the front road, but still look like junk. Use that language, so you want it to have, the next interpretation, what's a traditional store? The storefront from the 1950s or the storefront now, so.
Yeah.
They're gonna find ways.
All right.
You can say front, but I guess, as long as you have a door there in front, put another door in the back, everything enters through the back.
Shall have its main entrance
Could be.
on the public road?
We can look at it.
All right.
Yeah.
I just want to, again, exactly like you're saying, I want to try to weed this out. So when it comes down to it, we don't.
Well, actually, let me ask that. So the picture that's there, I think that's the one right by Wawa there, correct?
Yep.
The buildings, yeah. If they make the front look like it is the actual location that you go in, but I believe their parking lot's behind it, and that is where everyone goes, are we accomplishing, you know, it kept the look, which is, I think, the most important part. We don't,
Isn't that exactly what we're trying to avoid?
Yes.
Yes.
yeah. So,
It's all that, you've seen these come through,
right, exactly. No, I know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking. So is um, it the appearance or is it the function? And maybe the
That would be the,
function.
that would be
think
the
the-
main entrance comment. that-
Yeah, I think the intent would be functionality, right, Nate? I mean, that was the intent of the ordinance.
Functionality and the design, because as Mark so wisely said, you know, you could have a door there where everybody
Right.
goes in and it could not meet our design guidelines and they could have, you know, just gone in and done a demo on the front of the building and gotten rid of any of the historic elements or whatnot and say, well, this is what it's supposed to look like now. The intent is use the main door. If you have a secondary entrance in the back, okay, but you know, a functional entrance. And when we say traditional storefront, yeah, please define that. But when you look at the historic vernacular of Hamilton Boulevard in particular, the number of the buildings and the time frame that which they were built, it's historically a streetcar suburb and they're of a certain age and certain vintage. It's not a historic district. We don't have a HARB. We're not looking to put in a HARB, but we do have design expectations about what someone's going to do there.
Places do both have storefronts on both sides of the building, so I mean, that, you can do it that way. You just don't, one side just doesn't get used as much. It's whether they
Yeah.
want to pay to
Yeah, I mean, I think it ends
design
up
it
being-
that way.
Yeah,
There's a couple of examples.
I agree with the goal. I just am
Yeah.
trying to understand if that answers that.
Right. I guess the consequence could be more variance requests. Because if you really don't want to put your main entrance on the street because there's a parking lot in the back and everybody's going to go in the back, then we're likely to see more variance requests to allow the main entrance to be in the front.
But I mean, typically, like in West Coastville commercial, your parking is gonna be in the rear, right? Like our minimum, I mean, or I should say, the maximum front yard is 15 feet.
Right, yeah.
So that doesn't put parking in the front ever, if you're
Yeah,
designing.
which is the goal.
Right, which is the
We want
goal,
parking
so-
in the back.
So the goal is the parking in the rear, but still want the entrance at the front. If that's the
Yeah.
goal, then we have to craft that language.
You really are looking for the appearance as it was written before, right? Like you really don't care if people go in the back. You just want it to look like they're going to go in the front, right?
Well, historically, we've pushed to have it,
Go
have
in
the
the-
appearance out, you know, and say, this is the traditional entrances on the front main boulevard of Hamilton.
Yeah, that's why I was saying the word functional.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's,
Yeah, because it's what the difficult part about it is, and people have worked with us and it's come through this board is, well, it's the rear of the building, but here we're going to put in these windows and these shutters and it's an exit door, but we're going to make it look like a real door. And the next thing you know, someone's going to drive by and they're going to say, "Well, that's not the front of the building," but you know, they're trying to make it look like it. And
Yeah.
if they exceed, good, but if they don't, then it's like,
yeah,
it's not going to age well.
yeah.
And, you know, what we want is to protect the corridor, recognizing like, just put the front of the building there. Or, you know, we even told people on multiple occasions, you know, if you do the side and then there's the side treatment, then that's another option as well. But, you know, we've had individuals come in to just try and fix it in a way because of a peculiar way of the lot, or we've had some pre-application meetings where it's just not possible. And the reality is this is the way that this corridor was. We're trying to preserve it. Please keep it that way. Thank you.
Right, so I think it's a difference between intent or appearance,
Right.
right? If the intent is to get people onto Hamilton Boulevard to walk down to multiple stores, then the intent is to have the storefront entrance off the boulevard. If it's not, to have just the appearance, so when people drive by, it looks like a storefront and it looks old school, then those are two different philosophies. You know, and I think the intent, you know, I don't want to speak for Nathan or, you know, or Sarah, who was here previously, but I think the intent was to have the storefront, the utilization on the front so people could walk on the boulevard to different stores. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, the long-term goal would be great to get sidewalks all around Hamilton Boulevard and have that option that's available in terms of, you know, making it a walkable corridor. You know, we've said time and again, we don't want it to become a big regional corridor that's auto-oriented. This is supposed to be, you know, our downtown as a township, right? So that's what we're trying to achieve. We can definitely tweak that and in the next submission to you have that fully lined up. But I think the expectation here is twofold. One, the expectation in design excellence, and two, that it's not the rear door that's facing Hamilton Boulevard. It's the actual business entrance. Moving down the line, I'm on on the next page of 27, 10B. I'm on 2 with the buffers. We added adaptively reused non-residential uses because that's the expectation that we now have these existing strip centers or existing commercial structures that have been in place that are now going to have new users in who might need a conditional use or whatnot. And what we're trying to do is ensure that they too, if they don't have one right now, have to put in a buffer if they abut a residential use, a school, a daycare center, or a place of worship. One of the things that we're trying to make sure of when you look at the West Coastville District is if you abut a residence, but you have a business use, there's some level of buffering between the two of them for respect to the neighbors next door. Same if it's a school or a religious use or a daycare center. Number 4 on the following page, please excuse the numbering here just because Word was doing that and we're going to have it codified in the final version before it gets adopted. Any new land development, conditional use, or subdivision shall utilize architectural grade cladding or enhanced architectural features, i.e. you're coming in for a conditional use. We expect if you're going to come in for a conditional use, you're going to take pride in your property and bring it up to the standard of the township. Again, leaving roof-mounted HVAC, making sure that Chris has the ability to review how that gets handled from shielding from view in the West Coastville District. And then we're moving on to the Highway District. And again, not too many changes here at all, other than some of the specifics that we've talked about previously. For instance, all buildings shall employ the use of a storefront, office, restaurant, et cetera, facing the public road. In the highway, now granted, the highway zone is along the bypass. It's a highway commercial zone, but what we don't want to have happen is the rear of these structures in a new potential development not facing even our public streets. We want to have it all facing the street. And the other new language also includes making sure that the landscaping, street walls, and so on and so forth are included in the area as well. Just doubling down on that to make it abundantly clear. Other than that, there's nothing else in the highway commercial district that we decided to change because there isn't a lot of it. But we did want to make sure that those design elements were followed. So that's some of the specifics from our commercial areas that we were looking at. This is essentially the first package of administrative text zoning changes that we would like to get moving with you all. Does anybody have any other questions or comments about the commercial zones at this time?
I have a general comment.
Yes, sir.
I just want to add, and I know we didn't hit it, but I wanted to bring it up in front of everybody tonight, in the Orlick District, 15, Part 15, 06, the lot area with building coverages. There's no or other use, all other uses. So I just want to make sure we take a look at that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and as we move forward, just to give everybody a little bit of coming attractions, in our next package, we're looking at our industrial and Orlick districts, which not only are going to have functional housekeeping items, but potentially a couple of policy-related items. Nothing major, but just making sure that we have everything buttoned up. Same with some of our residential district stuff, especially when you look at it from a code enforcement standpoint, just making sure for quality of life for our residents. And then we'll talk about some potentially, when the time comes, and hopefully it's this calendar year, but maybe next calendar year, policy-related items. And we'll see what the will of the Planning Commission is to discuss what level of recommendation those are. Staff will come to you with a couple of ideas. We'll go from there. But again, this package right here, this is, I appreciate the discussion. The point in this is to just get it through so that we can make sure that staff can do their job effectively. And I know that this is about as interesting and flavorful as a box full of saltine crackers, but I appreciate everybody sitting through it so that we could get the comments and go and move forward with some future modifications to come with you with the final package. Does anybody have any remaining questions, we're at the 8:15 hour. I was hoping to keep this under 2 hours. We're 15 minutes over, sorry. But is everybody good? Okay, great. So just to give you a bit of a timeline, our intent is that we will come to you when we see you next with a more polished and finalized version of this. I will go over the issues with you that we discussed this evening and make sure that everybody's comfortable with the language and hopefully have a product that's in a position where we can further share it with the Board of Commissioners, make sure everybody's on the same page so that we can get moving with it.
So that's at our next regular meeting, the September.
Yeah, we would like to have something for you for September. Mhm.
And will we be discussing it in a similar format and review them all, or just if we had something, bring it forward?
The hope would be, just because this is one of those things where we would like to be able to have a hearing and get things moving prior to the budget season really starting to take over for the township, and we don't want to get in the way of that. Making it so that we can have our hearing before the end of the year and before we get too far into budget season. So it looks like we may have a little bit of a light agenda on the September meeting, where we have yet to, at the staff level, come back at that and see where we're at. But if we have time, have some more discussion and hopefully come to a conclusion on a couple of the items so that we can share it with the board and make sure that they have their chance to review it at a workshop meeting.
So vote for a recommendation at the next meeting.
If that's possible.
Yep.
Yep.
And if I think, Mark, if there's any changes, you can make that recommendation with any changes that night. Is that
Correct.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And that would give us time to then wordsmith it one more time and then just keep it moving. We just want to make sure that it's.
Yeah,
moving. As
definitely.
everybody knows, some of our newer members, I mean, we've been working on what we call this look back language since COVID. I mean, it's been a 5-6 year exercise. And at one point we were talking about some of those very larger policy oriented things where we got lost because we were talking about mixed use development. We were talking about, and we recognized we need to get the nuts and bolts stuff handled. And that's essentially what we're trying to do here is we'll talk about major land use policy moving forward as well. But right now we want to make sure we get these items addressed.
All good? Do you need a motion to adjourn? Or are we?
Only thing I want to add, sorry, Wes, just that,
All right, go right ahead.
no, that's all right. Next meeting will be September 11th,
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Thursday.
and we'll be at the community center, 6 o'clock.
Give us a motion.
Yep.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Next meeting.
At the community.